And now, a Hennepin County Library video presentation.
We're here with another library volunteer, and I'd like to have you tell us what it is you do for the library as a volunteer.
Oh, I don't know. I just come down and they tell me what to do, and I do something different every time.
So I love to work there because it gives so much pleasure to the people who live there. And it lightens the hours of the people who have, some of them have nothing else to do but read, and some of them are not able to do anything but read. So we feel we're doing a good work as well as bringing cheer to their lives.
It sounded like a lot of fun, and I thought it'd be a good opportunity to learn some responsibility and stuff for a job in the future.
Can you tell us why you volunteer at the library?
Well, I like to process books.
I think I started back doing volunteer work when I was perhaps 9 years old. I wrote letters for many of the older people in my neighborhood. I often wonder how the spelling was.
Hennepin County Library salutes volunteers. Today's program features comments from library staff and a very special musical performance by folk singer-songwriter Charlie Maguire in recognition of all the volunteers at the Hennepin County Libraries.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's lovely to see so many of you turn out on a beautiful April afternoon. The one consolation I'm told by Hazel Helgeson is that it's too windy and dusty to rake anyway. So we might as well come in and spend a few pleasant moments together. In preparation for coming over today, I did what a good librarian does when you have to stand up in front of a group of people and introduce a program. That is, I started looking up the derivatives of the various words associated with the program. And it's interesting when you look in a dictionary, whether it's large or small, that commonly associated with the word volunteer is to offer, and to offer oneself. And you've been offering of yourselves for the past year or past years, and in a sense, this is our return offering to you. Even as inconsequential as it might be, we're very pleased that you could join us for the afternoon, that we could have some greetings and comments regarding the contribution that volunteers have made, and then to share a pleasant program and to have some refreshments. So we're very pleased that you all are here. Our first greeter and commentator this afternoon is our Library Board President, Mr. Jack Cole. Mr. Cole.
Thank you. I, along with 6 other residents of Hennepin County, represent the citizens of the county on the library board. We, as each of you did, applied for our position, a volunteer position, and then we went through a screening process with the county commissioners. And our job is to really support the staff and the volunteers as you do the important work of having face-to-face contacts with the public that come to Hennepin County Library. You have the face-to-face contacts, and you also work behind the scenes, and you certainly enable Hennepin County Library to maintain its reputation throughout the country as a viable and exciting library system. I just want to say thanks on behalf of the board for, first of all, you volunteering of your services and finding a niche in our library system to give yourselves through Hennepin County Library. Thanks again.
Next, I'd like to introduce our library director, Robert Rohlf, who will speak from the staff point of view. Mr. Rohlf.
Thank you, David. Well, welcome on behalf of the entire staff. to the volunteers who make our job so easy and also make our job more fun to do. David touched on it, but I'll pursue it a little further. Webster's defined a volunteer as a person who enters into service of free will without compulsion. I like to think about it a little further than that and to say you give of your own self. The one thing that all of us have in common, and I think it's the only thing we all have in common, is every morning when we get up we think we're going to have 24 hours left in that day. And how we spend that day is how we relate to our fellow people and fellow persons. As volunteers, you give of yourself and of your time, which is the most precious thing in the world. If you're 95 years old and a millionaire, I think you'd rather have more time than your money. And you're giving your time to all the citizens of Hennepin County. I know to all of you, it's a pleasure to do, and it's rewarding, and it's fun, and you come back for more. But our service could not be as good as it is without your help. And I was reminded of that this afternoon when I briefly, but very fortunately, had a chance again to meet my youngest son's kindergarten teacher. My youngest son is now a sophomore at the University of Wisconsin, so that goes back quite a ways. But she's here today. She's a volunteer in our outreach program, and she works at Friendship House. And I know our library service there is much richer and much better because of her volunteer work and those of her colleagues. So on behalf of the staff, I'd like to thank all of you for what you give, the most precious thing in the world, your own time.
There are others among us who do give of their time to make the volunteer program work, and those are members of the Hennepin County staff, which many of you volunteers run across in the course of your contact with the library. In addition, there are a substantial number of staff members who cannot get enough of library activities, and they return on their own time during the course of the year to do volunteer work on their own, for which we are very grateful. Another person who's largely responsible for the success of the volunteer program in the terms of its organization and the way it works is our very own Stevie Kumble, our volunteer coordinator. Stevie is a library staff member, and as it is a reimbursed member of the staff, but there are many hours I know that Stevie puts in that really come out. Maybe it wasn't planned that way, but they come out as volunteer service to the library as well. We're very grateful for Stevie, and we're very happy that she's a member of our staff and able to work with you in this important activity. Stevie has a number of things to present to you in terms of recognizing you individually and some announcements and other things. Stevie?
I don't know why it is whenever I face this group, I always feel very nervous. I consider many of you friends as well as acquaintances, but I will say that right at the beginning, and hopefully it will get better as we go along. Hennepin County Library volunteers, you are indeed a special group of people. Over 200 of you serve as individual volunteers in nursing homes and community libraries, and also as homebound volunteers. Hundreds more of you serve as members of Friends of the Library groups in 22 community libraries. You range in age from 9 to 94. You come from all walks of life. You have a multitude of talents and interests. You contribute thousands of reported service hours, not to mention the thousands of hours of unreported service hours. I always say I won't mention those unreported hours during recognition, but somehow it creeps in. You do many tangible things. You process books, repair books, stamp date due cards, but those are gone. Run AV equipment, do surveys, prepare displays, run book sales, sponsor travel programs, deliver books, raise money for additional library materials, chair committees, garden, plan services, help library patrons, and perhaps most important, your friends, to library staff, administration, and to those people you serve. Some of the intangibles that we see coming from volunteers are the smiles of residents at nursing homes. Sometimes tearful gratitude expressed by shut-ins, because sometimes you're the only person that shut-in sees during the week. And children, the smile on a child's face as he discovers a brand new puppet that was bought by funds raised by Friends of the Library. Why do you do this? We've asked a number of people at different times, why do you volunteer? What we seem to find are some common traits that most of you share. You all express concern for your fellow citizens. You're doers rather than sitters. And you are committed to extending Hennepin County Library service. The other thing that seems to be quite a common trait that runs through all of the things you do is you quite often say, the work I do is nothing special or extraordinary. Volunteering is part of being a human being. Although your services are recognized and appreciated throughout the year, National Volunteer Recognition Week presents an opportunity to formally thank you for all your contributions. Today, when we thank some of you by name, others whose names appear in the program, we remember and honor Irene Swan. Irene was a deposit collection volunteer at Chapel View Nursing Home from 1976 until her death last year. As I said, a lot of our volunteers are listed, hopefully most of you, in the correct slot in the program that we've had designed for today. Today we honor and thank those volunteers who chose to retire from volunteer service in 1984. Also those volunteers who are always on call. Every community library has a list of names of people they know they can call at the last minute to help out with various projects. We thank those volunteers who are willing to help with special projects. Ridgedale experienced a great deal of volunteer assistance during the tax season. And we thank those of you who have become volunteers in 1985. We also honor and thank all of you who serve as members of the Friends of the Library groups. We have listed some individual Friends of the Library groups on the program. And I know some of you who are listed as starting in a certain year have been with the library a lot longer than I have, probably longer than Mr. Smith and Mr. Rohlf. And it's not an oversight. Those people have signed up as individual volunteers. I know, for instance, Hazel Helgeson, who is here today, is listed, I believe, in 1983. Hazel is an individual volunteer. She has been instrumental in the Friends of the Library group at Edina. Would the people who are members of Friends of the Library group, would you stand, please, and be recognized? Some of you play two roles, I know. As Mr. Cole said also, our library board members are volunteers. They certainly are. They do not receive payment for their services and the hours that they spend. So in addition to thanking our volunteers, a great deal of thanks and recognition goes to the library board members, to the administrators of Hennepin County Library. You've met two of them so far, Mr. Rohlf, our director, David Smith, the associate director, and Ms. Landers, the deputy director, is also here. There are also many staff members here who work with volunteers and are committed to the program. Would all of you please stand? Are any board members, our administrators, and our staff, our paid staff? I wasn't real sure how to do this next part because there are so many of you, not necessarily all here today, but listed in the program. What I'll do is name the year and how many people are still volunteering with us who started in that year. As I do the year, if there are people here from that year, would you stand, please? People who started in 1984, there are 38 of you still serving. Do you remember when you started? I guess that's the next trick. I can see some people I know started in 1984, but they're not standing. If you want, we'll wait till I do all those years, okay? 1983, there are 35 people still volunteering. People who started in 1982, there are 26 of you. 1981, 17 of you are still volunteering. Now, there are a lot of you there I can recognize. Would you all stand, please, if you started since 1981, between 1981 and 1984? If you're not sure, you can stand anyway. Thank you. There are 18 people listed in your program who this year will receive special recognition and honor. These are people who have either served as HCL volunteers for more than 5 years and or have contributed over 300 hours per year. Unfortunately, some of the people in this list are not here today. Some are ill, some are working, some are doing other volunteer jobs, but we will be thinking of them too. What I'd like to do is begin the first group, and if you are here from that group, would you come forward, please? The first group. These are people who will have begun their 5th year with HCL and contribute well over 300 hours a year of volunteer service. There are 5 people in this group, and I've seen at least 2 of the people here today. Those people are Alice Bell, Frances Baker, Kate Blackwell, Elizabeth Davidson, and Florence Gilbert. If any of you are here, would you come up, please? You don't want to? I'll come to you, Kate. This is a very small token of appreciation, not so much from the staff in the library, but from those people that you serve. Elizabeth is a homebound volunteer who delivers materials to shut-in people. She also bakes Christmas cookies for one person's daughter, little daughter, a very special lady, and this is a very small token of our appreciation. Well, they're all the same, it's just a box. Kate Blackwell, these people, by the way, started before I did. They've been with the library longer than I have. Kate, you'll get tired of hearing me say these are my favorite people, some of my favorite people. One of the things about the volunteers, and it's so wonderful about working in the program, I feel very lucky because I feel these are all very special people. People like Kate, I hope you will keep me young, and when I'm 90, if I am, I will think of the work that Kate has done. She doesn't just go to one elder hostel in the summer, 2 or 3, volunteers at St. Therese Nursing Home, serves as a librarian. She tells us she works about 15 hours a week, but I think that's probably much less than what it really is. Thank you so much. Okay. We had quite a group of people who began in 1980 who are still with us, and they're listed again in your program. I will read the names. I did see at least one of those people come in. Ann Collins, Pat Gorecki, Stella Rangan, Myrtle Rue, Ruth Stofiker, Charles Steffen, and Jean Whalen. I know Myrtle is here. I don't know if any of the rest of them. Would you come up, Myrtle?
The only one who's here?
You're the only one from that year. It must be everybody else is still home. Hey, would you come over with me? No. Nancy said they couldn't hear us. Myrtle started volunteering in 1980. She's at 7500 York and still works many, many hours. Again, you tell me how many hours you work, but I think it's probably a lot more than she tells us. Calls in requests to Nancy, and again, a very, very special lady. That's for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. There's no one left that started in 1979. But in 1978, we still have 2 people who are volunteering. Laura Riskadal-Hampton is an agency volunteer. She started out volunteering at Golden Valley Library, and then because of her job commitment, switched to Penn Lake because it was closer. She's flying today. She's an airline stewardess. But the other person who began in 1978, beginning their 8th year, is here. This person has contributed over 4,000 hours of volunteer time. That's what we have recorded. I have no idea what else it is. Billy Wolford, would you come up, please? This lady is more special than I can say, and as I said, I went through the dictionary too, but I kept in the thesaurus to try to find other words that meant wonderful and terrific. Didn't do too well. Billy is a deposit collection volunteer at Crystal Care. She doesn't just get books and take the book cart around. She does remotivational training for the residents. She goes to at least 2 libraries to get extra books for people, possibly 3. She mails Christmas cards, gets stamps, does shopping, does everything for people there. And Billy, again, I was interviewed to give my impressions of Billy, and one of the things I said was that I hoped that someday I would be able to feel that I've been half the person that you have been. Thank you so much. There are 3 volunteers who began in 1977, which means they've begun their 9th year of volunteer service. And I don't know if any of those 3 people are here. Lillian Carroll, okay, Marnie Coates, and Vivian Stevens. Lillian Carroll, you are here? Would you come up, please? Lillian is a volunteer at Golden Valley Library. And again, since these people have been here much longer than I have, I believe Lillian was instrumental in helping start the picture file at Golden Valley Library. For those of you who don't know what that is, you can ask some of us after we finish. Lillian, it's really good to have you here, and again, thank you for all your work.
It's a very great pleasure, and I've enjoyed the years I've been with the library. Golden Valley. Thank you.
The person that we have as starting in 1976, Kathleen Hanks. Kathleen was going to try to get here, but I don't see her. Kathleen did begin volunteering with us in 1976. She's the last person left that began that year. Volunteers at Dover Hills as a deposit collection volunteer. One of the things that happens, we have people who have been volunteering for the library since before 1976. The formal volunteer program started in 1976, and that's why our dates go back to that time. We do know that many of you have been doing service for the library long before that, but that's sort of an explanation as to why the dates are the way they are. In addition to these volunteers, I think a special thanks goes to their families too, because their families are people who either assist them directly or indirectly. And for those family members and close friends who are here, would you stand and be recognized too? In closing, I'd like to use a quotation from Margaret Mead. Some of you have heard this before, but as I look in different quotation books and read different things, this quotation remains one of my favorite, and I think best says what we feel about volunteers. We live in a society that has always depended upon volunteers of different kinds. Some who can give money, others who can give time, and a great many who give freely of their special skills. If you look closely, you will see that almost anything that really matters to us, anything that really embodies our deepest commitment to the way human life should be lived and cared for depends on some form of volunteerism. Thanks to all of you once again.
I can't recall how many years ago it was that I was invited to attend a children's program in the library, one of the many events that they hold in the course of the summer programs. And I thought, well, I'll slip in here for a couple of minutes and just see what's happening and leave. Well, the young man who happened to be putting on that program was our guest today, Charles Maguire. And I ended up staying for the whole program and came back to my office with an uncharacteristically wide smile on my face. Normally I'm kind of hunched over and a little dour looking, but that particular day I came back with a much better perspective on life. I've since been able to enjoy Charlie Maguire's music on Prairie Home Companion, records that I've checked out from the library, and other appearances that he's made in the library. I think that I could say without too much conflict that Mr. Maguire is one of our Minnesota natural resources. He celebrates life in Minnesota, its unique and wonderful aspects. The starting of the car on the cold winter morning, beautiful song that I recall about the harbor lights in Duluth. He celebrates getting older, childhood, life on the farm, and many other things. It's a distinct pleasure to have him here, and I welcome you, Charlie Maguire. Thank you.
I'm from Minnesota now, that's a fact. You can't tell by my shoes, can't tell by my hat, can't tell by the way that I wear my clothes. Only by a frostbite on my nose, only by a frostbite on my nose. Went north to Duluth, watch a boat sail in, worked on the dock, slowly sailed out again, loading with a chute, loading with a crane, loading that ore from the Iron Range, loading that ore from the Iron Range. Ran south to Minneapolis and St. Paul, spent all my money that I made last fall, floated down the Mississippi to the Iowa line, pushing those barges, taking my time, pushing those barges, taking my time. Moorhead in the west with the sugar beets grow, dig 'em out of the ground and before the snow. Walk down to the station, get your ticket for the train, climb aboard, come home again, climb aboard, come home again. Come on home now. It's Pine City, Forest Lake, Little Swan, Northfield, Red Wing, Marion, Ely, Little Falls, Grand Marais, Laverne, Montevideo, and Cloquet, Laverne, Montevideo, and Cloquet. I'm from Minnesota now, that's a fact. Can't tell by my shoes, can't tell by my hat, can't tell by the way that I wear my clothes. Only about a frostbite on my nose, only about a frostbite on my nose. It's a great honor to be here, folks. I played this event, this great, for all of the volunteers last year, and I was called again upon again this year to do it, and I'm very flattered you would have me back for such an auspicious occasion. I mean, you guys work hard all year, and then, you know, you deserve the very best, you know, and I don't want any of you to think that, you know, you're just getting the same person you saw last year. This is by acclamation, folks. I'm glad you're here. Glad you could make it. I couldn't do my job either without volunteers. If I didn't, people didn't come up and volunteer information to me, I'd never be able to get anything done. It's real important that people come up and talk to me whenever they have something to say. Sitting at, well, then you kind of weed out the wheat from the chaff, you know. Sitting at a restaurant one fine afternoon, with a columnist from the St. Paul Pioneer Press, and we were sitting around there, eating, having a good time. And he says, "Charlie, you know, you ought to write a song about Dan Patch, the great Dan Patch." And I said, "Oh, I know about him. The fastest horse in the world, lived in Savage, Minnesota." He says, Yeah. He says, "That's true." He says, "But did you know that they don't know where Dan Patch is? They don't know where his grave is. They don't know where he's buried." I said, "Is that right?" He says, "Yep." He says, "A friend of mine and I went out. We looked for 3 days on the old Savage farm and never even got close to finding out where Dan is." And I thought that would make a pretty good song. Dan was the fastest horse in the world. Around 1906, I think his fastest time was at the Minnesota State Fair, where he ran 2 miles in 1 minute, 55 seconds. That's awful fast, folks. Awful fast. Dan was a heck of a horse. But that's not why I wrote the song. It's because of what this guy volunteered to me. The interesting relationship between M.W. Savage and his fine horse. Dan Patch, he was a racehorse. His color was chocolate brown. Thousands of people paid out good money just to see that fast horse run. A quiet man was Mr. Savage. He wore a derby hat. He bought Dan for $60,000. He bought a big farm after that. Dan's stable had 8,000 windows all around his riding ring, and passing trains would blow on their whistle in tribute to a king. And when they died together, not 2 days apart, as if that man and the horse he treasured shared one beating heart. They were buried on the same hour, lowered down on the same day, as Mr. Savage had instructed just before he passed away. They took the man off to the graveyard. They took the horse in secrecy and laid him down by the Minnesota River with no marker for to see. Dan was buried out in the country. Mr. Savage was laid out in town. But if there's a heaven for fast horses, they're together, there's no doubt. Dan Patch, he was a racehorse. His color was chocolate brown. Thousands of people paid out good money just to see that fast horse run. Now, singing that song around, people volunteer more information. I met a woman the other day at the Sons of Norway. I don't know why they let an Irishman in the Sons of Norway, but they did. And she said, you know, Charlie, she says, my mother and father were extras in the film, The Great Dan Patch, when they filmed it at the St. Paul Fairgrounds. How much, you know, she didn't know how much her folks got paid. Do you remember? Didn't get paid at all. They showed you the rushes. Yeah. Did they premiere it here in Minneapolis? Well, no, not that long. Yeah. 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 Do you remember the co-stars? We were trying to think of who that was. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the female lead. Where did they get the horse from? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Dan Patch's great-grandson lives on a farm outside of Long Prairie, Minnesota. Looks just like him, but of course, he's getting on in age and he's not as fast. The day, I got to see that movie again because I don't know if Hollywood, you know, went into all the stuff about burying Dan in secret and Mr. Savage dying only 36 hours after Dan did. Did they go into any of that? Or was it mostly a love story with a little racing in there? Yeah, I'd like to know. See what I mean, folks? Volunteers. You guys are volunteers right to the core. Well, I'm going to sing this next song because I want to find out if any of you know anything about it. How's that? This year, on April 14th, just a few days ago, was the 73rd anniversary of the sinking of the great ship Titanic, and it has a Minnesota connection here. Because if some of you may know, when they made the movie, A Night to Remember, with Walter Pidgeon, I think, 1953, maybe, an entrepreneur who built Northtown Shopping Center brought the 1-ton model of the Titanic that they used in the movie and set it up for display at Northtown, where it stayed for many years, 35 years, I don't know. It weighed a ton, and it was on display there, and I'm sorry that I never knew it was there until they moved it. I saw it in the Minneapolis Tribune, where the Titanic Historical Society in Providence, Rhode Island, bought the model and took it to Providence in time for the 73rd anniversary. And I guess they did a beautiful job. They dusted her all off and lit her all up just the way it was in the movie. But at Northtown, the ship was displayed with a oil painting in the background of the icebergs, you know, that the camera panned on as they made the movie. And the people who were packing the ship for delivery, unfortunately, they folded the backdrop rather than rolled it. And when they got to Providence, they opened it up and it was all cracked. Too bad. So they couldn't use that, but the ship, I guess, got there okay. And the reason why I bring all this up is when I got married 15 years ago, a man came to my wedding who lived up above my wife's grandmother. Are you following this now? And he brought a gift to the wedding. He wasn't invited, but he was a nice guy, and we figured. And this is back in the old days when, I don't know if they still do it now, maybe in some of the more traditional weddings, but you know, where they have the table in the corner and the gifts are piled on the corner, and it's the job of the best man to keep an eye on them, and as if the guests are going to take back what they give. I don't know. And Mr. Edwin Wheat came in and left his gift, which was unwrapped, and he propped them up against the other wedding presents, and it was 2 pictures that he had drawn of the Titanic. And one was of the Titanic in full sail, and the other one was of the Titanic sinking. And I figured, I see, I don't know, maybe it's the songwriter in me, but I see symbolism everywhere, you know. I was beginning to wonder if maybe this was some kind of a bad omen about my marriage, was going to make some kind of a statement here. But that was just his way of reminding us all that he did go to the rescue of the Titanic. He was on the ship Baltic. Coming from New York, bound for Liverpool, they passed the Titanic at about 11. They were the ship that flashed the first warning to the Titanic at 11 o'clock that morning, saying that they had seen ice and for the Titanic to slow down. And of course, they were trying for a speed record, and they did not slow down. And when the Titanic hit the iceberg, all of the ships on the White Star Line, all the other company ships, no matter where they were, all turned around to come to the rescue because they thought that the Titanic could never sink and that it was only just going to be a temporary inconvenience for the passengers. They'd be a little cold, they figured, but that was it, you know. And Mr. Wheat was there. He was there, and I met him and talked with him many times after he came to my wedding. And he says the thing he remembers the most about going to the rescue was that the Baltic was not as fancy as the Titanic, but it was still a pretty plush ocean liner. And what he remembers was the captain sent down the word that they were to go to the bar and pour out all the bottles of liquor into the sea and fill the bottles with hot water so that when they picked up the passengers, they could give them each a hot water bottle. And he says it was a terrible thing to see. All that good booze going over the side. It was well after midnight. This is exactly what he told me. This is the story. Now it was well after midnight down in the glory hole. I was winning well at cards in our quarters there below. I was feeling lucky when the word come down that the Titanic was on the ice and we were turning around with the heave away, me boys. We're bound to be too late for the Titanic, sailing on the sea. Heave away, me boys. We're bound to be too late for the Titanic for all eternity, with 2 white stars on me collar and me uniform of blue. Homeward bound upon the Baltic, I was 20 years and 2. On that morning in April, the master he did say, roll out lads to your duty, you not see Liverpool today. With the heave away, me boys, we're bound to be too late for the Titanic, sailing on the sea. Heave away, me boys, we're bound to be too late for the Titanic for all eternity. There were great pots of coffee and also pots of tea. We filled bottles with hot water. There was oil to quiet the sea. All the gangway doors made ready, and so the bosun chairs. All the berths were made up. There were lanterns everywhere. With the heave away, me boys, we're bound to be too late for the Titanic, sailing on the sea. Heave away, me boys, we're bound to be too late for the Titanic for all eternity. And so we steamed westward, our funnels hot with smoke, until the wheel turned once more and we knew there was no hope. Black blankets for the living, black blankets for the dead, black blankets for to keep us as we lay in our beds. With the heave away, me boys, we're bound to be too late for the Titanic, sailing on the sea. Heave away, me boys, we're bound to be too late for the Titanic for all eternity. There were no unions in those days. Mr. Wheat told me that the White Star Line, all the ocean cruise lines in those days, you signed on by the trip. So if you were an Englishman and you signed on in Liverpool to go to New York, if they didn't like your work when you got to New York, they fired you in New York and you had to come back under your own steam. Amazing time. He later told me that he was at sea for quite some time after that. He says his brightest moment, though, was when he came back from France in 1918 aboard a ship that carried nothing but Red Cross nurses. And there was like 2,000 nurses on this ship, and just the only men aboard were the men that were running her. And he says it was the greatest time of his life. He says they were on an old boat, and it took a long time to get to New York. And they had a great time every single day. I have to give you a spring song now. Spring, I was requested to deliver a spring song to you. I live right across the street from the Mississippi, and I love to watch the towboats in the summertime now that the weather's getting good. And I got on a boat one day at the St. Anthony Lock because Master Pilot Will Ribbons volunteered again to take me aboard. And of course you know how long it takes to get to St. Paul from Minneapolis. It's just minutes by road. And I got on the boat at the St. Anthony Locks behind the big post office there downtown, and 12 hours later we were in St. Paul. There's a different pace on the river. And we'd go up over here and we'd drop a barge off, and then we'd chug over here and we'd pick one up, and we did that all day on the river. Finally ended up at Holman Field about 6:30 in the evening. A whole different way of life. Boy, it was fun. Towboat, where you been? Up the Mississippi and down again. When the deckhand pulls in the line, he waves his arms and that's a sign they were all gone. All gone. All gone, yeah. We're gonna feed that diesel, move on ahead. Tied to the lock with Polly D. Yes, tied to the bar so you can't get free. Tied to a schedule, no time to waste. Build that tow and deliver the freight. They were all gone. All gone. All gone, yeah. We're gonna feed that diesel, move on ahead. Filled with corn and oats and beans, with double hull for the gasoline. Riding up and down on the old J.O. so the pilot can see where the river flows. They were all gone. All gone. All gone, yeah. We're gonna feed that diesel, move on ahead. Turns the water wide, that load don't move, but I did fight side by side, all in a line, 6, 8, 10 barges at one time, they were all gone, all gone, all gone, yeah. We're gonna feed that diesel, move on ahead. Towboat, where you been? Up the Mississippi and down again, and when the deckhand pulls in the line, he waves his arms and that's a sign they were all gone. All gone, all gone, yeah. We're gonna feed that diesel, move on ahead. Well, this would be my final song, friends. I want to thank all of you for being such a fine and polite audience to me. With the spread that's on that table back there, I dare not sing much longer. My thanks to all of you for all your time and talents. My thanks from me for those of you who help in the library, so important, and the service to the homebound and working with people like that, which is a particular cause of mine and an interest of mine. Here you are alone, surrounded by your memories, far from your home, in a home at the end of the street. And you may ask why you have not been set free. It just might be because you still know love. You still know love. You can still spot happiness. You know that dreams are not just for the rest of us. You can still hear laughter and feel a soft caress. Oh yes, you still know love. There are so many hearts who need you so desperately, because you've never given up to bitterness or jealousy. And way down deep in your eyes, oh, I can clearly see, you're still a fighter for love. So turn and look at me and love me all you can, even though your body be in the iron grip of an unyielding hand. Hold me so close with your eyes, just as hard as I can stand, because you still know love. You still know love. You can still spot happiness. You know that dreams are not just for the rest of us. You can still hear laughter and feel a soft caress. Oh yes, you still know love. Oh yes, you still know love.
Thank you very much, Charlie. Beautiful program.
One of the reasons I volunteer, I have a great love and concern for people. And I think that we were put on this earth to help each other.